Welcome to a special edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It is one of our NFL division preview videos here that we are about to do. This is the NFC West division preview, a very interesting division this year, a division that's been ruled by the Niners the last couple of years. We'll see if the other teams in the division, the Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals, have anything to say about it. Ian Cameron, and I believe someone who actually did this division preview with me, if not last year, it was either last year or 2 years ago, but we figured his team resides in this division. We'll give this division to him. He knows it well. Liam Howe, a good friend of mine out west in beautiful British Columbia, back on the Frenzy. Liam, what's up? It's been a while. How are you?
Happy to be here. Good to be back. Ready for football season. Ready for talk some games, talk some fantasy, talk what we're looking at for the upcoming season. But exciting times. Ready to get into it.
Yeah, there's no question. It's an interesting NFC West division this year. We'll go in alphabetical order with the four teams. We'll begin with the Arizona Cardinals, the outlook for them here in this 2024 season. Last year, obviously, look, I'll be honest, 4-13 was actually better than a lot of people expected for Arizona last year. People thought the team would bottom out, be one of the absolute worst teams in the NFL, but they ended up being slightly better than expected. They actually weren't that bad of a point spread team, quite honestly. There'd be games where they would be competitive. And, you look at the team last year, obviously, you see Kyler Murray tearing his ACL the year prior. And then, of course, last year, it took him a while to get back. It was not until the second half of last season that we saw Kyler Murray. And I remember they were dealing with the likes of Clayton Tune and others at the quarterback position early in the year last year, Arizona. And you could tell they were definitely struggling without Kyler Murray. I'll tell you what, Murray didn't play that bad down the stretch. Now, the big question is going to be the receiving position now. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. taken fourth overall to be that guy, the number one bona fide receiver that probably Arizona doesn't have without him. At least with Marvin Harrison Jr., you have a chance, for him to kind of be the number one receiver on this team. You're going to need some more from Greg Dortch. I like their tight end, Trey McBride. I think he showed flashes last year of being able to play well, and he had some really good games second half of last season. James Conner at running back, injuries are always a factor with him. It seems like he gets banged up a bit, misses games, but when he is on the field, he's been solid for the Cardinals. We'll see if he can stay on the field. The offensive line's been an issue. There's no question. Last year, it wasn't great. You had Kyler Murray scrambling, in the second half of the year, broken plays because the line couldn't protect all that well. But they pick up Isaiah Adams. That's definitely someone that should be able to help them quite a bit. Jonah Williams as well should help. You look at what else they've got on that O-line. It should be better. I think it has to be better because I don't think it could be worse than what we saw at times last year from it. So that's a good positive for them. On the defensive side of the football, obviously last year, you look at they went defense in the first round as well with Darius Robinson, someone that should definitely help along the defensive front, which was definitely a problem area for Arizona last year. They couldn't stop the run. They were bottom of the NFL in terms of run defense last year. So getting a player like Darius Robinson in the draft should help them. There's no doubt. You've got Bilal Nichols, Justin Jones brought in for this D-line to help them out as well. The problem is, where's the pass rush going to come from for this team? They don't have that great bona fide pass rusher on this football team. Remember, they had Montez Sweat, traded him. They traded Chase Young too, but who the fuck cares? He was terrible anyway last year. Totally overrated player. But when you look at this pass rush here for the when you look at the situation here for Arizona, they were right around the bottom in the NFL as far as pass rush is concerned. That's going to have to improve, and I just don't know if there's proven performers there as far as getting at opposing quarterbacks. That would definitely be a concern for me because today in the NFL, you got to, if you're going to be able to defend these high potent quarterbacks and passing attacks, you got to have a good secondary that can cover one-on-one down the field. And if you don't have that, you're going to have to get pass rush. So I don't know if the pass rush is going to be there for Arizona. So that means they better be damn good in the secondary, and be able to cover one-on-one. And when you look at the secondary for the Arizona Cardinals coming into this season, it shouldn't be too bad because Max Melton was drafted in the second round. They also went corner in the third round with Elijah Jones. They brought in Sean Murphy-Bunting, who's had a pretty good career in Tampa Bay prior to being added by Arizona. So all things considered, should be a better secondary. And actually, the cornerback group looks good. Safety position, they got to figure out the other safety spot, but you do have Budda Baker in the other spot, and he's as good. He's one of the better ones. It's a question of who can match up with him. The linebacking core around them is, iffy as well. It's mediocre, I guess, average, if you will, at the linebacker spot. But the secondary should be improved, and they're going to have to cover because, again, pass rush is definitely a concern for me with Arizona. Look, Jonathan Gannon, year 2. I wasn't expecting them to be as competitive last year. It's going to be interesting to see if Kyler Murray stays healthy. That he has to, because there's a big drop off at quarterback. But Arizona's not winning this division. They're not in that position yet. But when you look at it, I think there's a clear divide. There's 49ers and Rams probably battling it out in this division, and then that's the Seahawks and Cardinals after that. Wouldn't totally shock me, though, if the Cardinals make a year of improvement this year. Maybe get to 5 wins, maybe even 6 could be on the radar for them. As far as the win total, I would lean to the over with that. And I do think from an ATS perspective, look, this team surprisingly was cashing tickets and covering point spreads last year when they were expected to be absolute shit. And now you expect them to be better here a little bit in year 2. So it might be a little bit of a underrated, undervalued point spread team, one that in certain spots, especially in good situations, you might be able to back them this season. What do you think here, Liam, when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, well, a couple points you made that are pretty good there. First off, you commented that you think they're around 6 wins for the season. That actually coming into the show when I was doing my analysis, that's kind of where I had them spotted too. I wouldn't pick beyond 7. I don't think they're a 500 team. I think that division's just a little bit too tough and too competitive in the middle. I don't think that Seattle, is that much worse off from where they are at. I think it's going to be a competitive matchup when they get in that division. It's just a solid one when you look around and compare it around the league. Now, with regards to what's going to be differentiating them, what they need to do to get their season on track, one big part is, Connor. Like, if he can stay healthy, but I think what they really need to do is try and get away from some of that older strategy where they're trying to make Kyler stretch the ball downfield, make these big long passes. They just don't have the O-line for that. It's, quite honestly, it's fucking dumpster fire. So they need to, in my mind, start to try and channel that, use your athletic quarterback, get him outside the edges, do a little bit more of a college option kind of scheme, get him outside the pocket, get him moving his feet, make him a run option, just 5-10-yard passes down the field, move it down the field that way, because you got to get outside the lines, especially when you're going to get some of these athletic D linemen that are coming in the division. Like, especially when you get to San Francisco, that D line is loaded. You're going to have Bosa coming at you. You can't just be standing there in the pocket ready to launch it downfield, because with the mediocre O-line, you just can't lock those guys up. There's no way you can go one-on-one with a subpar, like right guard, whatever, right tackle, one-on-one with Bosa. You're just asking him to get cut. So, there's that analysis too. I do like the upgrades that they made on offense. Big red flags on the defense, particularly in the middle. I like their upgrades on the line and around the edges with their corners. Obviously, Budda Baker's a stud. But again, ever since they lost those veterans, those guys that have been the core of that defense in Arizona for years, they've had a lot of turnover and just haven't found those guys that can really lay down the middle of the defense. And you've seen it in this past couple seasons. So for them, I guess my big focus would just be keep things simple on offense. Let your quarterback be mobile. Don't let him take hits in the pocket. Keep him outside the pocket. Keep him moving. And use your running backs. I'd like to see another complement there come through the depth chart. Someone that can actually have, obviously Connor's got that physical game. Someone that can be more of a scat back, a release back that can kind of tie in, just play off the heels of Kyler when he gets going off the corners there on those options and stuff like that. But I think really utilizing their run game and just getting short, quick passes to these new young receivers like Harrison is going to be really how they start to make developments in their game, because the reality is they just don't have the tools yet to really have a foundation to be successful, and it's specifically in the middle of the field where you got to be.
No doubt. I screwed up, by the way, with part of my preview there with Arizona. I mentioned Sweat and Chase Young, but part of my Washington Commanders preview ended up in my Arizona notes. So
I was wondering, I was like, did they get moved around here?
That's my bad on that one.
You have to Google
they
something.
were on Washington. Somehow the Commanders notes ended up in my Cardinals notes. But no, of course, Montez Sweat and Chase Young were not on the Arizona Cardinals at any point last year. No, I think there's upside for this team. There's no question. I think when you look at it, you look at this Arizona team, and I didn't expect them to win 4 games last year. And considering, we'll talk about Seattle in particular. I don't know how good they're going to be this year. Arizona, might be a little bit, and more than importantly, it's not so much the wins. I expect them maybe to have, be a good underdog point spread covering team this year. We'll see if that's the case. We move on to our next team in the division, the Los Angeles Rams. Here's another team that I wasn't so sure how good they would be last year. Well, they turned into this is why Sean McVay is still a very good coach. That was not a team expected to be great last year, the LA Rams. But sure enough, they were very, very good, obviously, on the offensive side of the football. It was it was back to the offense that we're used to seeing from a Sean McVay coached LA Rams team. Absolutely outstanding on that side of the football they were last year. Matthew Stafford showed he's still got plenty of gas in the tank, especially when he's, the plays are called correctly, when he's put in a game plan offensively for success. And we definitely saw signs of that last year. And it sure helps that, obviously a burgeoning star at receiver exploded onto the scene in the rookie Puka Nacua, who was just absolutely phenomenal last year, considering he's just drafted in the 5th round, and to see just how incredible a season he had. He set all the records for rookies as far as receiving yards are concerned. So just an absolutely incredible season it was for him. And just imagine if they have a full season of Nacua and Cooper Kupp, both of them healthy, both of them on the field at the same time for extended portion of the season. You could only imagine how explosive that receiving core can be, and the weapons and the options that Matt Stafford's going to have to work with. Not to mention, look, Demarcus Robinson's a very capable WR3, a third option. There's no doubt. And don't sleep on the speed of Tutu Atwell. He's kind of been buried because they've got all of a sudden got all these options now at receiver, but he's someone that can make an impact. Of course, when you're talking about Matthew Stafford, he's never been overly mobile. He's never been a guy that you can trust, to make plays with his feet, when the pocket collapses. So what do you need? You need a good run game. And all of a sudden, here's Kyren Williams last year, who did an outstanding job. He was basically just completely making Cam Akers a forgotten man in the running back spot for the Rams last year. What's great about Williams is he not only had breakaway speed in the open field, a physical runner, breaking tackles, but he also is a good pass-catching running back. You got to be able to do both these days in the NFL. You can't just be a guy that can get the ball, run the rock. You got to be able to catch the ball as well out of the backfield. He did that. He had 32 receptions last year. He rushed for almost 1,200 yards last year, 12 rushing touchdowns as well. It's going to be interesting to see how he fares. Now, he plays a very smash-mouth, hard-nosed, physical running style, Kyren Williams. So the good news is they got that Blake Corum out of Michigan in the draft. That should help them as far as running back depth is concerned for the Rams going into this season. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. The O-line was a bad O-line 2 years ago. Last year it improved significantly. There's no question. Alaric Jackson was outstanding. Havenstein, of course, the other tackle, has been around a long time. Rob Havenstein, he's very good. You look at the O-line as well this year. It should be very, very solid once again. I got no real issues with the O-line. The 5 projected starters, they're all projected. They're all plus players. They're all projected to be above average starters. So this should be a very, very good O-line. This should be a very, very good offense. Top to bottom. There's no reason that the Rams shouldn't be able to score, 28, 30 points on a regular basis this season with what they've got. The defense is the much bigger question mark. There's no question about that. Aaron Donald retired in the offseason, but that was not vintage Aaron Donald last year. Let's be real. I mean, that was not one of his better seasons. So, yeah, they'll miss him, but that was definitely a declining Aaron Donald last year when we saw him in his final year with the Rams. But the good news is they draft Jared Verse out of Florida State. He's really, really going to help that pass rush. He's got the potential to be, just one of a J.J. Watt type of or T.J. Watt, his brother in Pittsburgh now. Got updated because I think T.J.'s going to turn into I think he's already an even better player than his brother, T.J. Watt. Jared Verse has that ceiling to be a T.J. Watt just all over the quarterback and just disrupt the quarterback and crush the pocket. He's got that kind of upside because I saw this guy play in Florida State quite a bit. He was just a menace, to opposing quarterbacks. So it was a nice draft pick by the Rams to get him. He fills a need too because the pass rush, especially now with Donald retiring, a little iffy. That's good. And Byron Young's already established there with the Rams. He's pretty solid as far as getting after the quarterback. He had 8 sacks last year for the Rams, so that's a good thing. They also went in the second round pick to the interior of the D-line. Braden Fisk ended up getting drafted. Bobby Brown, Kobe Turner. Brown, very good against the run. Turner was better last year, obviously, as well. Very, very solid year for him. So there's some things to like. There's pieces to see that this D-line might be better this year than it was last year. There's no question. I think when you look at the secondary, that was the issue at times last year for this Rams team, where they were getting picked on down the field, the vertical passing game. They were a bit vulnerable. But Darius Williams, Tre'Davious White. Now, Tre'Davious White's an elite corner from the Buffalo Bills. There's no question. But injuries and durability are starting to become an issue for him. This is a guy that's going into his 30s now. Can he stay on the football field is the big question. A great player, but how much of Trey White are you going to see? Can he avoid those injuries that have really hurt him in the past? It's funny, Darius Williams used to be with the Rams. This is going to be his second tour of duty with them, but now he's back in the fold here, so he knows this Rams, what they want to do on defense, so it should be a nice hand and glove kind of fit, for him being back on this football team. There's no question. And you look at it, too, Quentin Lake was a plus corner from the slot. There's things to like. The secondary, to me, also looks improved. Now, what does concern me is, look, Darius Williams has been around a long time. Trey White's been around a long time. If these guys get injured, I don't know if the quality depth is there. That's the one thing they don't have in the secondary. They've got good starters now in the secondary, but if they suffer injuries or they suffer some attrition, they could be dealing with some concerns again in that secondary. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep these guys on the field, no doubt. The linebacking core, obviously, when you look at it, Ernest Jones is outstanding there, no question. And definitely the leader of that linebacking core. They have question marks in the other areas, but definitely I still believe this is a defense that should be improved. I'll be honest, and Liam's not going to want to hear this as a Niners fan. I think the Rams are going to push the Niners for that division this year. I really, truly believe that. This is a loaded offense. This is a defense that's made a lot of improvements, in my opinion, going into this season. I know Aaron Donald retired, but look, the D-line, I believe in Jared Verse. I believe in some of the draft picks they made. They've definitely shored up the secondary. The O-line is one of the best in the NFL. They got a good running back now in Kyron Williams. And the fact the O-line is so elite is great because Stafford needs that time in the pocket. He should get it. And then if he gets that time, they're right up there with anybody now as far as the quality they have at wide receiver when you talk about the 1-2 punch of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. So to me, I like this Rams team. I actually think they're not only over their win total, which is probably my favorite win total in the division this year of all four NFC West teams. If you ask me right now, Ian, which win total do you like the most? It's LA Rams over. Right now, over 8.5 minus 150. I think there's a 9-8 team minimum, and I mean bare minimum. I think they could win 10, 11, 12 games, and like I said, I think they can challenge the Niners even for supremacy here in the NFC West division in 2024. Liam, those LA Rams, what do you think?
I actually like them. I agree with your sentiment there that I think they are going to push the Niners. Not a ton, though. I think the Niners are still too good there. I think that the Rams still have a little bit of ways to go. I think we saw it last year after the drop-off from their Super Bowl year, how big an impact of that down play from Aaron Donald had and losing Jalen Ramsey on the edge there. Obviously, he was a vital playmaker for those corners there, so that does have a big impact. Now, as it crosses over to Aaron Donald, I actually think that, obviously he's a massive player, one of the best of our generation, going down sure ballot Hall of Famer. But moving forward, maybe not this year, but next year, I think that's actually going to do them a lot of benefits since free agency. Number one, he was slowing down, but also that opens up a massive cap space for them. He retired a little late in the offseason this year, but I think that they can address that next year. And the other thing about that Rams management, they're like the Vegas Golden Knights. They're all in all the time, baby. Like they're going to make those trades. They don't care about those draft picks. They want sure things, and they want to win now. They know what they got, and they know that at any time they're just a few weapons away. That's why guys like Bobby Wagner are willing to go there, right? And take those one-off contracts. And I think that's going to continue to be the case. Obviously, guys want to live in LA. And as long as you guys have a good franchise there with great coaching that are going to put guys in the right position, be successful, which is what he's known for, similar with Shanahan, which is dramatically now becoming a big impact for guys in free agency when you start to look at the contract size and targeting numbers, specifically with things like receivers and all that. So knowing that you have a coach that is going to put you in the right position, going to get you your touches, going to do what's right by you, I think it's going to really draw a lot of people there in free agency, and you're seeing it with other guys. As it goes to their offense, I think they're going to have a massive upstep. Yeah, their line is looking great. They got some good running back depth there. Cooper Kupp is healthy again. which is fantastic. I think that now you're going to really see the impact of what they can really do, that two-headed tandem there. I think Puka is going to have, not a massive drop-off in terms of what he's been able to do, but in terms of his
He could
production.
drop off a little bit and still have a great season. That's the thing.
Well, they've got more weapons there now, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's lining up next to Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's number one receiver, right? So he's going to get your attention. So Puka's numbers are going to go down. He's still going to have a massive impact, and he's got a top 3 quarterback in the league throwing him the ball. So I think he's going to be fine. I actually think they have, I think he's going to be over 1,000 yards again. I think Cooper Kupp's going to be over 1,000 yards if he can stay healthy, and they might even be that one team that gets a third receiver up over there. Because I think they're just that talented on offense. You mentioned it on defense. There are a couple variables, just guys aging out. I think this year they're probably going to be around a 10-win team. That's my guess. I think that's right around kind of the ballpark that they're in. They're right on the edge of being a legitimate, playoff contender. I think that this year is the foundation for the next couple seasons. Now that they're re-identifying themselves without Aaron Donald, and they have that gap now that they, not only in the locker room but on the line, but they need to address, right? And I think that they're going to have to do that next year in free agency, and that's where we're going to start to really see the reshaping of the LA Rams, where they start to really come back and go, hey, you know what? Stafford might win another Super Bowl here.
Yeah, I think this is a very good football team, and one that's going to challenge the next team we're going to talk about, the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, is a team that lost in the Super Bowl last year to the Kansas City Chiefs. Heartbreaker, overtime loss, really, really tough, a winnable game, but unfortunately just wasn't meant to be. Obviously, Brock Purdy, that was his first full season last year as the starting quarterback for this San Francisco 49ers team. And look, I don't want to hear about just he's a good quarterback. I don't want to hear, is he a legit good quarterback, or is he just a good system quarterback? He's just a good quarterback. Don't have to label it. Okay, he's in Shanahan's system, and everyone's going to benefit from that. Still a good quarterback. It's worked out for him there. He's obviously, no one thought when he just entered the 49ers team, entered game action, I should say, 2 years ago for Garoppolo, that he would be that good right away. And sure enough, he was. I think when you look at it, there's all the talk about whether Brandon Ayuk is going to get dealt. He's obviously requested a trade. They're still working on it, what's going to happen there. But even if they trade him, there are still weapons at receiver, although Brandon Ayuk has been a big piece of that receiving core, because if let's say he's not there at the beginning of the season, then, more attention will be paid by defenses to Debo. There's no question. You're going to need a lot more out of Juwan Jennings, although Juwan Jennings has flashed at times for this 49ers team. No question about that. You're going to need to see if Jacob Cowing and some of these others can step up at receiver as well. You still have, Kittle, obviously, at tight end. You've got the McCaffrey-Mitchell duo at running back. And there's just so much they can do still, but it would hurt a little bit. There's no question if there is no Brandon Ayuk on this team this season. So we'll have to see how that goes. A terrific season, obviously, for McCaffrey. Was one of the MVP candidates. Now, he's had injury problems in the past, but so far so good with the Niners. He's been able to stay upright, stay healthy, stay on the field, and that's definitely what you want to see. The O-line is a concern. We talk about how the Rams O-line is improved. It was good last year, and I think it's just as good, if not better, this year. And I love Trent. Trent Williams is not the question. He's still, it's incredible how good he is still. Mid-30s, and you saw the difference in the Niners last year. Those games that he missed, Trent Williams, that O-line, the way they played without him compared to the way they played with him. And you could just right away tell the difference. But there are other holes. It's going to be very important to see how they play, because there's some other players on that O-line that didn't play the best by any stretch of the imagination. I wasn't impressed with Jake Brendel. Banks really hasn't gotten any better. This is McKivitz as well. I don't think he was all that spectacular on that O-line last year. So those guys are going to have to step it up, because quite honestly, you go after that everywhere after left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. Are you getting a plus player at those positions? That is to be determined, in my opinion. That's not something I can say right now on late July that they've got an above average player at these other O-line spots other than Trent at the left tackle spot. And again, Trent's in his mid-30s. You're going to be able to bank on a clean bill of health for him this year. So that's definitely an area to watch for the 49ers as the season goes on. But we know the weapons are there. There's no question, as we've talked about. When you look at the defensive side of the football, the 49ers, Eric Armstead's gone. Chase Young, don't let that door hit you on the ass on the way out. I mean, that's no big deal. I couldn't care less that guy's gone. He did absolutely nothing last year when he got to the Niners. But Eric Armstead will be missed a little bit. There's no question. And look, the Niners, let's call it like we see it. There was an absolute decline on the defensive side of the football second half of the season and into the playoffs. We saw it. Green Bay was able to move the football against them in the playoff game pretty well. Detroit carved them up for most of that game. And fortunate as shit, the 49ers got out of that game with the victory against the Lions in the NFC Championship game. Maybe if Dan Campbell kicks a couple of field goals instead of always going for it on fourth down, maybe that could have been a different result there for the Lions in that game. But you look at this defense, should be interesting what we've got. Leonard Floyd, I love that pickup, no question. And actually, you know what? He's kind of taken the spot of Chase Young, and they're going to use him as like the other pass rusher alongside Nick Bosa. And so to me, Leonard Floyd, I trust him to produce a whole fucking hell of a lot more than Chase Young. So I do like that addition. Gross Matos was brought in for a little pass rush depth as well, so they can get a rotation going. Malik Collins, nice pickup as well for the defensive front seven for this San Francisco team. And I think he's still a guy that's capable of playing at a pretty high level. Javon Hargrave, of course, coming off a really strong season as well. So, while the defense declined last year, Chase Young didn't do anything. That was part of the problem. I think you replace him with a better player, a more productive player in Leonard Floyd. Like I say, Malik Collins is a nice addition. There's no question. Hargrave played well last year. Devondre Campbell was brought in to shore up the linebacking spot as well for this Niners team. Wasn't at his best last year, but this is a guy, that's played very well in the past. So maybe on a better team, bounce back year. It's going to be interesting. Of course, Dre Greenlaw, that brutal injury in the Super Bowl. So we'll have to see if he's going to gain full health. And of course, Fred Warner still got it, a perennial Pro Bowler for this Niners team, one of the leaders without a doubt on this defense. Secondary, meanwhile, you look at it, Tayshaun Gibson played pretty well. There's no doubt. They've got someone really, really solid now. This is a guy that flashed big time last year, pretty much out of nowhere, and that's Talanoa Hufanga for this 49ers team. The way he played, especially down the stretch, got a lot better. Unfortunately, just as he was really starting to, he's making interceptions. He's pass breakups. He was doing it all. Bam, injury in week 11, out for the rest of the season. So that was heartbreaking to see that because Talanoa Hufanga was really starting to play some excellent football in that secondary for the 49ers. So it'll be interesting to see. They get Brown, by the way, was a draft pick a couple of years ago. He'll be filling out that secondary as well. There are some questions, though. While I like Charvarius Ward, he was solid. Who's going to fill those other positions? They're going to have to hope Bernardo Green is someone that can step in, in his second year, be better than he was in his, last year. So we're going to have to wait and see. Or actually, this year they drafted him. We'll have to see if he can be good right away for this Niners team. No question. Jake Moody, hopefully a little bit more. I think he's got a huge leg. But there'd be some times last year, a couple kicks, it's like, how'd you miss that? And then there'd be a 50-yarder, he'd drill it. So just a little more consistency out of Jake Moody, the kicker from Michigan. We'll have to wait and see. I will say this about the Niners, when you look at their schedule, too, it's worth noting. Buffalo's on their schedule out of the division. Miami's out on their schedule out of the division. The Jets are on their schedule out of the division. Kansas City on their schedule out of the division. Detroit is on their schedule out of the division. They've got some tough ones. There's no question. I'll be honest, the 49ers win total right now, sitting at, a pretty lofty number. Last I checked with the schedule with some question marks in a few positions, I'd be leaning a little bit to the under. I'm not probably betting it because, I do think that defense in particular, while it's not as big of a drop-off this year as I thought, I think they brought in some good players. Can they mesh is the question. Was the defensive fall-off last year down the stretch just a blip? Can they put it back on the rails this year, or is that a harbinger of things to come? So I have not bet the 49ers in any way. I have no futures on them, because I'm worried they're not going to get back to the Super Bowl this year. I think it's going to be difficult. I don't have them to win the division because I think the Rams are live to maybe pick them off in the division. I would lean to the under with the win total for San Francisco, but I have not moved on that yet, and I don't think I will because the last I checked, too, I felt the number was in a good spot, with the 49ers win total, which is currently sitting at, it's 12 and a half, is minus 250. 11 and a half is minus 140 to the under. Again, under 11 and a half, minus 140. I would lean that way. But again, it's not something that I feel the number's in a good spot, but I think it's more likely that we see, 11 and 6 or worse from the Niners than that we see 12 and 5 or better from the Niners. They're your team, Liam. Have at it. What do you think, Niners?
You said a few things there that had me agreeing with you. I think I don't I love the Niners. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but I don't think they're getting more than 12 wins. I think with some of those games that we were just talking through right there, it's too much competition. I think, you can't take any of those teams, especially Detroit, for granted now. They're young, they're fast, they're physical. The one thing about the Niners is I think they got a great managerial side, staff structure, particularly for the regular season. They're regular season dominant. The problem is that when they get to the playoffs, you start to see play calling change in guys like Shanahan now, where they're starting to play not to lose rather than to win, and you can really see that in the past couple Super Bowls. I think Shanahan is 0-3 in his past couple and then he's going back to the OC with Atlanta. Like he clearly changes his play calling when it comes down to these tough moments, and it looks like he's just scared of making a mistake, and you can't do that in those big games. You got to play to win. Now, as we start to look at these teams, and we were talking about this before the show, I really think that the Niners have a 2 max 3-year window where they can really start to make some moves at getting that Super Bowl ring finally with this current group of guys. I think Trent Williams is a stud, but as you start to see some of these other guys age up, like Kittle's not going to be on top of the world for much longer. McCaffrey, he's been running into a wall for the past 10 years of his life, so you got to give him a little break at some point. He's going to start slowing down. And then you just bounce that around the field. I think Juszczyk is the best fullback in the league and wildly underrated across the NFL. I think the only reason he doesn't get that much attention is just because of the star-studded power across that roster. But they have studs everywhere. The problem is they're just getting older. Now, if we start to look at these receiver hangups and guys holding out and what's going to happen there, I'm not too worried about it, honestly. I think if you look at the Niners, a lot of their successful runs come off the edges. You got Trent Williams there on the left-hand side, and you got the best blocking tight end in the game, and George Kittle there on the opposite side. So you still control the edges of the field, and you got threats at receiver there that can push the ball downfield. And they play so well laterally, right? There's so much misdirection. You can't just make those bank jump on plays and start to play as intuitive of a lot of these guys like to do unless they have that film work they've just been putting in and they know, hey, this guy's moving here. This is what's happening. Because the reality is there's just too many moving parts. Shanahan's playing it like chess, not like checkers, and he's got it all planned out well in advance. I think that they're going to have a big jump up in some of the receiving core. I like this guy from Florida. I think he's going to be a big jump in fantasy later in the season. I think particularly that they don't lock down their receiving core before the start of the year. Him in the first few games, especially with Debo getting so much attention, is going to be huge. So he's kind of one of my big sleeper picks. His name's slipping my mind right now. But and then as we get to their defense, it kind of is a polar opposite of their offense where they got the aging stars. The defense, they got some young studs there. Like Warner, I think is the best middle linebacker in the league. He's still young, ready to fly around for another several years. Tafunga is a stud. You start to see them kind of fill in the blocks around there a little bit. One thing I think the Niners do well is draft well, and they get guys in there because they're a storied franchise, right? Similar to what I was saying with the Rams, people want to play there. I think you're going to see that in free agency moving forward, and especially when you get some of these older guys that maybe haven't won. A lot of these linemen that maybe can slide in there next year. That might be somewhere to focus on, because I think the reality is you got a 2 to 3 year window here with this group of guys where you can say, hey, we can win it now, or we got to start looking at the rebuild. Kind of the similar way to what the Rams have done in the past couple seasons when they said, you know what, like Ramsey's out of here, Odell's gone, and kind of try to reevaluate things before Stafford got too old and they can make another push for it. I think Purdy's young, which is fantastic. I think he's, the guy. He definitely beat expectations. I don't care about all this crap about game manager or if he's Tom Brady or whatever. The reality is he wins games and he protects the football. But that being said, he's got a contract coming up. So I think that once that impact starts, when we start to look at these rosters and the contracts some of these quarterbacks are getting, it's fucking insane. Like, why is Lawrence making over 50 million and he's been in the league for 2 years and hasn't even made a playoff game? Like, that blows my mind. So now you compare that metric.
Contracts are getting up. They're not NBA bad yet, but they're getting closer. I don't like
It's
it.
absolutely nuts. So, and then you look at the impact it's having on the roster, and then so that Purdy contract's going to be big, whether you agree with it or not. The guy's been to a Super Bowl in his rookie contract, so I really think that this is the window where they need to start to say, hey, let's be aggressive with it. Stop calling these little dump down passes and trying to run the ball off and protect the clock in the Super Bowl. If you get there, win the game. Be aggressive, use your weapons, let them go out and play ball, because you can't go back there. If they go back again and lose again, he's lost the locker room. You don't go to 3 Super Bowls and then have everyone like you.
No.
So,
well, and that's the thing. Look, this is now what, 2 Super Bowls he's lost to Kansas City with San Francisco. The offensive coordinator situation with Atlanta years ago there with Dan Quinn when New England came back. I mean, this is the Super Bowl is like a little skeleton in the closet now for Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, he's got the asterisk next to his name. Everyone knows he's a great coach, but he's got to get over the goal line.
And finish exactly. And that's the that's the only thing the Niners are missing right now is that Super Bowl, and that's why it's another Super Bowl or bust season. Where it's going to be again. Anything short of that is going to be disappointing to anyone that's a fan of the San Francisco 49ers. But to me, the pathway to get back there is not going to be easy. All right, the final team in the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks. It's going to be interesting to see how they go. Geno Smith, obviously 2 years ago, outstanding year, no question. But again, what's very interesting is, how is he going to be able to fare here this year? Getting older. We'll talk about the O-line situation in a moment. But what I will say is also these are the 2 stalwarts, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in the receiving corps. Can they be healthy for a full year? And we know they've had situations where they've been banged up, but Lockett's been very consistent. DK Metcalf, is probably in his prime still. He could have a big year. And I certainly like the way the product from Ohio State emerged last year, Jackson Smith and Jigba for the Seattle Seahawks. Very solid last year. He could be even better this year. Kenneth Walker, a great running back, and Zach Charbonnet is a very solid number 2 option behind him. So the running back position is good. The skill position talent, to be honest, for the Seahawks ain't the problem. It's, can Geno get them the football? Can Geno make good decisions, not turn it over, which is always an issue at time. But there are major concerns on the O-line, okay? And that's critical if you're going to have a guy like Geno Smith, as your quarterback. He's going to need some protection. There's no question. I like their left tackle. Charles Cross is very good. Above average player, very solid. And the other so the tackle spots, Abe Lucas, he's pretty solid too. But the interior of that O-line, all 3 starters are gone. They've got 2 new guards. They've got a rookie, I think, in the right guard spot. They've got Laken Tomlinson at the other guard spot, who's like a marginal player. Tomlinson was terrible last year with the Jets. We'll see if he can come through here this year for the Seahawks, but that's definitely a big question mark without a doubt. So whether they're going to be able to get any push in the middle of that interior of the O-line for a guy like Kenneth Walker to run the football is going to be the big question. I think there's big time concerns there, the interior of that O-line. There's no question. So definitely something that would concern me. The defense, meanwhile, last year was big problems. They couldn't stop the run last year. Teams just ran the football right down Seattle's throat last year. So we knew defense had to be a priority in the draft. And the good news is they ended up going with, in the first round, Byron Murphy. It was definitely going to help them as far as the defensive line, especially the ability to stop the run. There's no question. And look, this was such a bad interior of the D-line last year for the Seattle Seahawks that even as a rookie, Byron Murphy should be able to step in right away and start, because I think he's maybe already better than a lot of the players they had there. We'll see what the pass rush can do because when you look at the rest of that defensive front, hopefully Murphy can provide some of that. He's definitely a guy that can get a pass rush, but last year, it was just difficult, to get consistent pass rush. Uchenna Nwosu, they expected a lot out of last year for Seattle. He wasn't very productive in terms of pressuring the quarterback. So pass rush is still a little bit of a concern. It's very, very mediocre. I've got questions about whether there's proven performers on this team to be able to get after the quarterback, whether it's – and look, you got Stafford in the division. You got Purdy in the division. You got Murray in the division. I know Arizona, we can talk about how good the overall team is, but, you got to be able to pressure these guys, and I worry about that, for Seattle coming into the season. There's no question. The secondary, when you look at it, they have some good corners. I like Devin Witherspoon, who's very, very good last year. It'll be interesting to see, can they get Michael Jackson, Tariq Woolen to be able to play well. Woolen had a very good year, especially last year. If he can play well again, that will help, but they have to replace everybody in the safety. Both the starters are gone from last year, and there's big question marks. They've got a guy that, hasn't started a ton of games in the safety spot, and then the other guy that's probably going to be pegged to play there is Rayshawn Jenkins, and he did not play well in Jacksonville last year. So there's questions there. The top three linebackers are gone for Seattle, including Bobby Wagner, and we know what a great career he's had for the Seattle Seahawks, kind of a leader on that defense. I know he's not what he used to be, but still, you miss a guy like that when he's been a leader for the team. Tyrell Dodson, Jerome Baker are expected to fill the void. The question of whether they can fill it as well is a big question, and not to mention Baker's had problems staying healthy in the past. So those are concerns. You look at this Seattle Seahawks schedule. It's not the worst schedule, but it's not an overly easy schedule either. It's going to get very tough for them down the road when you look at it. So Seattle's win total right now, if you based on where it is, you can find it. Probably, I think most books have it at 7.5 right now with this Seahawks team. I can only look at the under with Seattle. I think it's going to be a struggle for them to get to 500. There's too many question marks. Whether Geno, a year older, is going to be good again, that remains to be seen. Now, Bet365 has Seattle under 8.5, minus 170. So if you want to be a little bit safer and ask them to be an 8-9 team or worse, you could lay the minus 170 on under 8.5 wins, or you could go under 7.5, plus 105, get plus money on it. Be 7-10 or worse, but you'll get a better price. You won't have to lay as much juice on the under 7.5. But I think I would go under 8.5 just to be a little safer. I don't mind laying the minus 170, but put it this way, it's under or pass for me when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks and their win total this year. Liam, what do you think here for Seattle?
Yeah, well, I think they were at 9-8 last year, and objectively they're a worse team, and totally new head coaching staff, totally new management, all set around their totally different styles.
And look, I like McDonald. I love the hire. I actually really, and I should have said this, but I love the hire. I think he was a great defensive coordinator in Baltimore. He's done a great job there. I think you give him time, they'll be a good football team again. I just think it's going to be a little difficult for him in year one.
Well, especially too, he's got the defensive background, which is great, but that offense isn't exactly loaded with weapons. Yeah, Metcalf and Lockett are studs, but they've been injury prone, and no knock on Geno, but he's the fourth best quarterback in the division. So when you're starting off and you have the weakest quarterback in the division, and that needs to be your offensive guy, you're already at a disadvantage. So it's not like Purdy where he has other weapons elsewhere where he can kind of rely on that, and Kittle can be his release valve, or McCaffrey can go break a play, and now all of a sudden the defense has to factor that. They don't have those weapons. He still has to find ways to get the ball to guys like Metcalf and Lockett. And Lockett's a stud, but he's getting older, so you got to wonder how much more tread he's got on the tires. I like Metcalf, but I think the reality is they just don't have enough weapons and enough ability to get him the ball to make him a true threat in terms of changing the game. I actually think that this is probably his last year in Seattle. I think he's probably going somewhere else next year. That's kind of my hot take. And a large reason behind that thinking is, this new staff. I don't think that they're going to be above a 500 team. 9-8 last year. I think that their 8 wins is as high as they're going to get. So that 8.5 cutoff with Bet365, I'd definitely take the under on that for anyone listening. But this year they're going to have a massive change in just play style, atmosphere, team environment, locker room, all these guys that have been kind of coming in and out. I like Witherspoon, but historically they've been drafting like shit. So like the depth just isn't there. And you don't really have a ton of studs all around. So I think that, this year, they're going to go in there with open eyes thinking they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're probably going to have a couple injuries, start to go on a decent falling tread near the middle of the season, and then start to realize that maybe now might be a rebuild time. because Geno's not getting younger and he's not the best quarterback in the division. So I think that needs to be an approach moving forward. Because Kyler's set in Arizona, Purdy's set in San Fran. Stafford's still got a few years left, but they can't keep going on for the next 5 years of having the fourth best or whatever insecurity at quarterback if they don't have the weapons there. I think they need to, take the pill and just suck it up this year, play it out. And then the reality is you got to start making some moves and getting some guys in and out so you can start to rebuild and set yourself up for the future. Because the other thing too is you still have all of Pete Carroll's old guys in there, right? Like this new coaching staff. I'm sure you have respect for Carroll and nothing wrong with him or anything like that. But you're going to want to set your own vibe, set your own team, have your own identity in there, right? And Pete Carroll was very niche in that sense, and he's not very similar to a lot of these other NFL coaches. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of differences there that they want to kind of instill in their team. So I think this year it's going to be a large feel out kind of season for them. I think next year they're going to have to really start to make some hard decisions, not necessarily in their management because they've already made that approach with getting rid of Pete Carroll, but just in terms of how they want to rebuild and move them forward in the next 4 years. Because if they want to keep competing for average, they can keep doing it. They got the roster for it, but they're in a tough division. They're not going to win. They don't have a winning roster. So at this point, what are you doing? In my mind, just take the pill and start making some rebuilds around here because you don't have the tools to win. I think that they are under 500, so I think that they're really competing with Arizona for who's going to be the bottom of the division. I think it's a good opportunity for Arizona to say, hey, we've started to get some guys in here. We're building a culture where we can kind of take that next step, and we're not exactly the jokes of the division here, and we're not going to get blown out by San Fran. But again, that's up to them. I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming out at the end of the year, and I think that there's going to be a bunch of movement within the division just because teams like Seattle and Arizona they're going to start to realize that, hey, if you want to win in this window, you got to make some drastic changes, And I think DK in Seattle is going to be one of those moves.
Hey, so you're like Joe Tessitore years ago, decaf Metcalf, he called him. Yeah,
yeah. But yeah, I think he's on the way out next year. He's still in his prime. You can get some for him, right? So why have him sit there be a 500-yard receiver for in all honesty, a journeyman quarterback?
Yeah, it's a fair point, no question. Like I say, I've just when it's Seattle, look where you're at. I think you got this new coach here, but again, you've got Geno Smith. You got to figure out what you're going to do in the future at the quarterback spot. You've still got a lot of holes in various position groups. You're in a division where, look, the 49ers and the Rams are pretty much given to be the top two in this division, barring something catastrophic. Why pound your head against the wall? Do a little bit of a mini rebuild on the fly, retool on the fly. Because to me, asking this coach to put this team into a position to compete in year one in this particular division with a San Fran and an LA Rams in that division is asking a lot.
I actually think it's a detriment to the fan base too, because you're going to have guys going out there thinking they're going to win games. I think they should get rid of DK and start making some moves now, load up on some draft picks, because the reality is another bad season or down season for some of these guys, you're just diminishing their trade value because they're getting a year older. So I think, get them out now, brace the suck. You're going to have a terrible season. Load up for the next.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think there's definitely a game plan and a blueprint to follow. Hopefully, it's just a question of will Seattle follow through on it. Great discussion about the NFC West. Are there any other teams in the NFL that you want to talk about as far as teams you think are bet on, teams you think are bet against, teams that might be worth a look as far as futures to win the division, the conference, or the Super Bowl? Have at it. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of takes here. I think, obviously we saw this in the draft, but I think Atlanta is going to be one massive, eye-opening franchise to keep an eye on all year. I think I was telling you this before the show, but I think Kirk Cousins is going to, have the red eyes, dad rage going on and just have a go off for a season. I think he's going to be in the MVP conversation. That being said, I don't know how that locker room or that organization is going to move forward beyond that, because even if he does have the best year of his life, you can't make the moves that they did in the offseason and have everyone be zen and good, knowing that you're working towards, a Super Bowl right now, because that's not the way the chips are falling. So I think that's going to be a big eye opener. What they're going to do there, whether someone gets fired or someone gets traded, that's going to happen there. I think that Harbaugh down in Los Angeles is going to be good. I think they're going to build a strong foundation similar to what they did in Baltimore with his brother. But I think that's going to take a few years to really get going. I don't think Herbert's at that part yet where he's really comfortable. Like, he can launch the ball. He's got a rocket arm. I just don't think he's at the part where he's an established quarterback at protecting the football and making those confident downfield reads, as opposed to just launching it and going, I got a guy that can make the play. So I think that Harbaugh is going to help him kind of fine tune those moments and help him figure that out. So I think 2-3 years down the road, they're going to be a real challenge for the trophies. But my Super Bowl take is I'm actually going Niners and I'm going Bengals. I think the Bengals are getting back. I think Joe Burrow and those guys have things going now. I think they got some obviously a great locker room there. Like those guys seem to mesh well. Honestly, I think Joe Burrow is, right behind Patrick Mahomes for the elite quarterbacks. I said this I think a couple years on our show, a couple years ago when we were on the show, that if I was a NFL owner, I would take my next few first round draft picks and get him out the door for Burrow to do what you got to do to get him in, because you know that he's going to be around forever and he's going to be the guy. So I really believe in him. I think they're going to have a massive bounce back year. And I think it's going to be them and the Niners in the Super Bowl. I think Kansas City is going to have a little bit of a start to go downhill a little bit. They're starting to have receiving questions, and Travis Kelce he's a stud, but he's getting older and slower. I know his game was never built on speed, but you can't be on the bus forever. Eventually, you got to get off, right? So I think they're going to start to go downhill, and I think the Bengals and Niners it's their season to kind of figure it out between the two.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The Bengals team, and we'll get to them in the AFC North preview later on. That's a fascinating team. Is it just as simple as plug Joe Burrow back in at quarterback, and they're back to right there in the mix again in the AFC? Because obviously without him last year, we saw what happened. Didn't even make the playoffs. So
he's a game changer.
He is a game changer. I almost think he put the jinx or hex on himself with that bleach blonde Burrow look that he's going with right now. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but
Slim Burrow.
Yeah, exactly. Slim Shady. Yeah, Slim Burrow. Exactly. That's what he's turned into. It's like an Eminem wannabe now, wandering around at the facilities there at training camp.
On repeat.
Yeah, exactly. I am whatever you say I am. That's probably what he's going to be saying, rapping around the facility there.
They're actually pumping that in his headphones and his helmet.
Exactly. But look, they're going to be a fun team to watch. That division's interesting because Cleveland's got a little upside. Baltimore's still good. Cincinnati's obviously better with Burrow. Pittsburgh's retooling at quarterback now with the Wilson and Fields combination. So it's going to be interesting to see that AFC North play out, no question. All right. If I had to give a best bet in this division, I already said it. It's LA Rams over 8.5 wins, -150. I like that quite a bit. How about you? If you got a best bet from the NFC West, what would it be?
I would say my best bet would be actually either the Cardinals on the over or the Seahawks on the under. I think the Seahawks aren't going to match what they did last year, and I think the Cardinals are going to exceed it. So those would be my two choices. I don't think the Niners. I think they're right around that 12-win cutoff, so it could go either way for me. And the Rams are right in there too. So I think the safer bets are definitely the Arizona, the Arizona and the Seattle Seahawks.
There you go. How about that? A double best bet. He's in a good mood today. Liam Howe, our guest. Yeah, he's giving you two best bets. Yeah. Giving you two best bets here in the NFC West. But just line shop here. We'll give everyone what the best numbers are out there. We'll give you under 7.5 -180. Actually, under 7.5 -185 on Arizona. Or sorry, over, I should say. My bad. Over 6.5 -160 on Arizona. Under 7.5 +105 on Seattle. So there you go. Under 7.5 Seattle Seahawks. Over 6.5. Arizona Cardinals. There you go for Liam with his win totals here in the NFC West. Great stuff. We're doing all of these divisions right here. Special editions of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy throughout the next few weeks. Every NFL division will have a preview video, and every college football conference will have a preview video as well. So we'll be recording these for the next few weeks. Looking forward to it. We'll have a bunch of different guests on as well. Philip Nelson, former Minnesota Golden Gopher quarterback, former East Carolina quarterback, was in some NFL camps, briefly in the CFL as well. Philip Nelson's going to help me with a lot of these division previews in the NFL specifically. So that'll be coming up in the next few weeks as well. Liam, final thoughts, final words before we wrap it up?
No, just excited for the season. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to seeing how it all plays down and shakes out. But go Niners.
And go Niners, of course. And he's off to Croatia, so we wish him all the best there at the trip to Croatia in a few days. Great stuff for Liam Howe. I'm Ian Cameron. Hope you enjoyed this NFC West division preview. And again, we will see you next time for another NFL division preview right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.